So welcome to District 5020 Zoom training for trainers. My name is Corey Leparty. I am the District Membership Development Chair, and I'll be running your training today. So the first thing we're going to go through is getting around in Zoom. There are lots of controls in Zoom, and I just want to point all of those out to you. First, you have your audio settings, which when you're a trainer will be in your bottom left area of your screen when you start up. Then you have your video settings next to that. You have your attendee management settings that are down there as well. Polling will be on and an option when you do your trainings. Share screen is available. You have your chat section, your breakout rooms, reactions, the more tab that we'll look at, the end or where you end your meeting, and then all the way up in the upper right, you'll notice the little box which is your screen view settings, and we'll talk about those later as well. So the second thing we're going to look at is your audio and video settings. These are the first things you're going to want to jump into when you set up for your presentation or when you're rehearsing and practicing with your session support. The audio settings, like I said, are down in the bottom left when you first boot up. So when you need to mute or unmute yourself, this is available down here or wherever the menu bar is. It'll be on the far left. And when you click it, it should look like that. So you'll notice that in Zoom, the text that's on the screen is often the text of what would happen if you click on something, not the text of what's happening currently. So we are currently not muted, but it says mute. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at the controls of Zoom. So once you click that, you're unmuted and people can hear your audio. Right next to that is the little up arrow, and that gives you all the advanced audio settings. So when you click on that, you'll see you have the ability to select a system microphone. You can select your speaker system. You can actually test your microphone if you're having some audio issues. And there's also even more advanced audio settings that if you click through, bring up the full settings menu. So this is where you can set the input and output volumes on your speaker and your microphone. It also has a section that you want to make sure is pressed that gives you the ability to press and hold your space key to temporarily mute or unmute yourself. This can be really handy when you're presenting or facilitating. There are more advanced options as well. And when you click on Advanced for the audio settings, you'll get a whole nother menu. You can see that show in-meeting option to enable original sound, and then all of the background noise suppressors and things like that. For the purposes of our presentations, I would leave those all on auto, and I would leave the show in-meeting option, enable original sound, unchecked. Now, if you were a YouTuber and you were playing music and sharing all kinds of exciting things you're doing audio-wise, you might want to mess with those settings to make the audio quality a little bit better. But for our presentations and the fact that most people probably won't even have a separate microphone attached to their computers, we'll just leave these settings as default. Now for the video settings, you want to click on the little camera where it says Start Video, and when you do that, you will see your video. And so once you know that you have your own video up there, there's also settings using the little up arrow. They allow you to choose the camera that's connected to your computer if you have more than one camera available. You can also choose your video settings there or choose your virtual background. When you click on the video settings, it'll go back to that main settings menu. And in that main settings menu, you'll have the ability to go through and do a number of different settings. So you can mirror your video. Just know that if you mirror your video to look at yourself, when you do that, if you're wearing anything that has text on it or your background has text on it, mirroring that video will show the text backwards for your attendees. The other thing you want to note on this setting is to make sure that the touch up my appearance is turned off. When we record these videos, if we're going to use the feed that actually includes your camera, when you click on the touch up my appearance, what happens is Zoom digitally smooths everything out. So it's a digital wrinkle remover, but it adds an awful lot of fuzz and grain to the video picture. So when we go to edit it later, it looks really bad. So I suggest you make sure that the touch up my appearance is turned off. The other thing from this menu you want to note is the display up to 49 character participants per screen in the gallery view. This is really a setting for the facilitators. If you want to be able to view how what people's reactions are, or whether or not they're physically raising their hand or trying to get your attention, you can see a lot more people on screen at one time. And almost all of our sessions have more than 49 participants. So this is another area we suggest you turn on. A lot of you are commenting on the virtual background that I use, and so let's walk you through how you might change to your virtual background. Typically, I would suggest not using a virtual background unless you practice it and know that you're going to get a good quality image, but let's walk you through it. So when you click on Choose Virtual Background, you have access to all the virtual backgrounds that have been uploaded to Zoom. The way you upload to Zoom is there's this little plus right above all your pictures. And when you click on that plus, it gives you the opportunity to add an image or add a video into the Zoom window. Now, anything on your computer that's an image or a video is available to upload, but just know that once you upload something there, that's available for anybody else who's using that login to present. So be careful of what you upload. Another thing to note while we're in the settings window is the general settings. It's defaulted to ask you to confirm when you leave the meeting, and there are settings for theme and to change the skin tone to your reactions. But one thing you might want to look at is the show my meeting duration. That little button there allows you to see how long you've been presenting. And if you are someone who tends to run over in time or kind of lose track of time when you're presenting, by clicking on the show my meeting duration, you'll be able to know whether or not you're getting close to going over with your presentation. There's also keyboard shortcuts that are available under the keyboard shortcuts tab. They're available for the meeting, chat, and general section. There are quite a few of them. We're not going to go over all of them. And there are also different keystrokes whether you have a Mac or PC. So I suggest that when you're practicing, you kind of get used to some of the keyboard shortcuts that you might want to use. So step 3, attendee management. Those are the two sections down at the bottom where you can either invite or manage participants. And when you first log on and you haven't allowed anybody in, once somebody is in the waiting room, this little screen will pop up and you'll see that you have people waiting to be admitted to your presentation. Now you can admit them by clicking the admit here, or you can see a waiting room, which brings up another screen. It brings up your manage participants screen, which then gives you the opportunity to admit either down at the bottom or up top. Now, once you admit somebody, they will be the screen that you see immediately, and then you'll notice that your screen actually goes up top or off to the side, and it is not the featured screen at that point. So in the participants pane, there is a more section down at the bottom, and when you click on that, it gives you some settings that you can change. Once you've started to admit participants into your session, I suggest that you turn off the put participants in a waiting room on entry so that you don't have to click and manually admit them. They can all just come in at that point. You should also make sure that the play, enter, exit chime is turned off at this point so that you don't get interrupted in your session when people come and go from the presentation. You will see down at below the Manage Participants pane, clicking that allows you to remind people that down at the bottom is the area where they raise their hand. And there will be information that goes out to you on some slides that you will need to put into your presentation to let people know to raise their hand when they have questions. You can also hover over someone's name area next to where it shows their camera being on or off, and it will bring up a more screen or a more drop down. And that more drop down will give you the ability to chat directly with that person. You can ask them to start their video if you want to see them. You can make them host or co-host depending on whether or not those settings are turned on. You can rename them there. You can put them back in the waiting room if you need to, or if they're being a disruption, you can actually remove them from your presentation altogether. You have the ability down at the bottom of the participants pane to mute all or unmute all at one click, so that if there's a section where you're looking for feedback or if people are being too noisy, you have control there globally to all the participants. And when somebody does raise their hand, you'll see that in the participant pane and the little blue hand will be up. Now, you'll get a brief notification when somebody raises their hand up on your screen, but the facilitator or session support should have that participant screen open most of the time so they can tell whether or not people are raising their hand. So in the participant menu, the way the hands are shown is in the order that they get raised. If you always go to the top of the list and ask that person, that's the person that's technically the next in line. Also in the More section, gives you the ability to lower all people's hands. So if you get in a section where you're asking people to vote by hand, or if you've gone through a lot of questions, you can lower everybody's hand and then move on. So the next step is controlling your view in Zoom. So there are a number of things to note. If you see in the upper right, it says Gallery View. So that means if I click on that set of 9 boxes, I'll go from the view I'm in right now, which is speaker view, to a gallery view, which gives me a view of multiple attendees as long as their video is on, or their names if their video is off. There is a setting deep into Zoom where you can turn off viewing anyone who doesn't actually have their video on, but I don't think we have that turned on. So the view that you get in this view will be determined by how large you have your screen size. So by stretching your screen or shrinking it top to bottom, you'll get a different alignment of the screen of the attendees that you're looking at. So when you click this little box up here in the upper right, you'll also go to a full screen mode. Now, when you go to full screen mode, you won't be able to see any of your other controls other than the ones that say exit full screen and the controls that hover above the top. So always remember up in the upper right, if it seems like all of a sudden you've lost access to things, look for the exit full screen and click on that to get back to a more accessible view. Now, if you push your screen narrower, like your browser window is narrower, it may put the video on top of each other. You can also see when you're viewing your participants like this, that if somebody raises their hand, the little hand raise icon is in the upper left of their screen. So if you hover above the upper right of your screen, you'll get the ability to mute yourself, as well as you have these 3 dots that bring up a drop-down menu. That drop-down menu allows you to stop your video, and it also gives you the opportunity to pin your video or hide your self view. Now, some presenters like to hide their self view because they're showing a PowerPoint or a keynote, and they don't like to watch themselves while they're talking, so they might do that. But if you pin your view, and this happens every once in a while, you'll be the only person you see no matter who's talking. And so you want to make sure that you have pin video turned off on that setting. Now, if you do the same thing in the upper right of your participants windows, you can directly ask them to start their video. That is where you could also chat with them, make them host, co-host, remove them, and then it also gives you the opportunity to hide non-video participants. If you have a lot of people in your training and not a lot, and a number of them aren't using their cameras, you can click on that hide non-video participants, and it reduces the number of little pictures that are on your screen. You'll also note that there's a little colored bar around that participant. Whoever's got the color bar around them, that's the person that's live being recorded at the time, and it's also typically the person that's speaking whose audio is coming through Zoom. So the next step is screen sharing. So screen sharing, you'll notice, is down in the bottom center, and it's highlighted in a green box with an arrow. When you click on that screen sharing section, you'll see all the things that you're available to share on your computer. So the default that comes up is sharing your desktop, but most people will want to have a Keynote or PowerPoint open ahead of time, and that is what they would want to share right off the bat. There also should be the ability to share your whiteboard if you want to make notes or act, as if you were writing on a whiteboard to explain something. And when you click on that and bring it up, it turns the whole screen white. It also gives you a number of settings across the top. So you can move these menu settings around. So there's settings for your normal controls, and then you'll see on the right there are the settings for the whiteboard area. They include the format setting, which allows you to change color, width, and text font and so forth. On your normal control bar, once you're in any sort of share mode, you also get this more section that brings up this drop down when you click on it that gives you control to all kinds of different things. There also is the ability to do remote control, and as we talked about, I'm pretty sure this is turned off. So this would be as if you wanted your co-host to actually be able to click through slides that you had on your own computer, and you would give control to somebody else or accept requests through that setting. That setting doesn't come up actually unless you're in a share mode, just so you know. Now in the bottom right, you'll also notice that on the whiteboard you have the ability to add more pages or cycle through the pages that you've already created. The other thing you want to make sure that you do if you've got any sort of audio or a video with audio in your presentation is that you make sure to click on the share computer sound before you actually start sharing that application. You can also click optimize screen share for video clip. I don't know that it does much difference, but if you click that, then the share computer sound automatically gets clicked on. So once you start sharing your presentation, it will come in similar to what you're looking at right here, but it's not going to come in full screen mode, so people will be able to see any settings, controls, or sidebars you have. So you want to next make sure you go into full screen. And that's why we suggest that your presentation is in full screen and being shared before you allow people into this presentation so that you're all geared up and ready to go. You also should have the ability to annotate your screen. This means drawing or writing over the top of your presentation if you want to put emphasis on any one area. So when you click on annotate, it'll bring up the same sort of settings that are in the whiteboard, and you'll have the ability to write on the screen, make notes, type, and spotlight different areas of your presentation. You want to make sure that you click the clear before moving on to the next slide in your screen, because all the annotations you make on that slide will carry over and are going to look messy and not make sense when you move on to the next slide. The other thing to note is that once you go into annotate mode, you lose control of the ability to click through the next slide unless you click on the mouse, which is located on the upper left. You do usually have access through your left and right keys on your keyboard, but if you're in the habit of clicking with the mouse, just click on that mouse setting while you're annotating and you can still click through your slides. Now, one other thing I want to point out is that when you're in any of the share modes, you have the ability to change the view of the screens of your participants. And again, this is something that's probably important for the facilitators, maybe more so than the presenters. You can see at the upper left, there are four little sections, kind of a small line, a bigger box, a double box, and then 9 boxes. Depending on what you click will give you a different view of your participants' cameras and their videos. So when you click on just the first line, all you'll see is the name of whoever is speaking or presenting at that time. If you click on the 9 box, then you'll get the full mode where you'll see as many participants as you had set up. This is where having the setting clicked to allow up to 49 participants gives you the ability to see more people at a time. When you're in the side-by-side view, this allows you to have a strip of people that you're viewing, and that strip will either be at the top or the bottom or on the side, depending on how you change the size of your screen and where you drag it around. So it may not always be in the upper right, but it will always have that strip sort of look to it. So the other thing to remember when you're in presenter mode is that when you're done sharing, you click Stop Share, and that will take you back to the presenter mode menu. This gives you the ability to swap back and forth between your presentation and your whiteboard, but it also gives you the option for some advanced sharing that is listed up at the top. When you click on advanced sharing, you'll see that you can also share just a portion of your screen, or you can share music or sound only. Now, you might want to play some music when you're starting your session If you do, make sure that you turn the volume down very, very low, because Zoom tends to amplify all digital music that's being played on computers. And the other thing is, when you click on that music or computer sound only, it automatically clicks on the share computer sound and optimize share for video clip. The other thing, if you click down on the upper arrow down by the stop video on the left, is that you'll bring up those settings again, and you can get back in the settings menu where there's a whole share screen section. Now, this allows you to change things like whether or not you enter a full screen mode when you share your screen. This may be the reason why you end up in share screen mode and you're not sure why. It actually allows you to change the side-by-side mode. This is whether or not you have participant videos and your presentation on the screen at the same time. And then the silent system notifications when sharing desktop. This one should always be turned on if it's not defaulted on, because if you have a system, like if you leave Facebook open with your Messenger, or you get noise notifications when you get an email, you want to make sure that silent system of notifications when sharing desktop is on, so that people don't get interrupted and our recordings don't get interrupted with whatever notifications that your computer is getting at that time. Also, the share screen has a set of advanced settings, and they allow you to not only change the frames per second of your video and your presentation. This can sometimes be important if your system is lagging and people are having a hard time viewing your presentation. But it also allows you to toggle on and off the show green border when I select the shared content. So you should be able to see whatever you're sharing on your computer by knowing that it has that green border around it. But if this setting is turned off, you wouldn't notice that. And so you have the ability to share any of the open tabs, any of the applications that are open on your computer at any time. Only the one that has a green border around it is the one that your viewers will actually see. So the next step is using the chat. The chat is also located down at the bottom bar, unless your bar has moved around on the screen. And when you click on chat, the chat window opens. It's probably a good idea for the moderator to have the chat window open so that they can check for questions and any information people are trying to relay. And at the bottom right of that chat menu is 3 little dots. And when you click on those dots, you can pick, see the settings for who you're allowed to chat with, or who a participant is allowed to chat with. If you click on the drop down that said everyone, then you have a list of the people that are in your chat, and you can chat directly with somebody, you can chat with everybody in the group, or you can chat privately. One thing to note is that anyone has the ability to save the chat. As you can see on the screen, it says save chat. And when they save the chat, they will download the entire chat, even the private chats. So you do want to be careful what you put in the private chats, because they aren't that private if somebody manages to download the chat. Next section is reactions. Down at the bottom, the reactions, the little smiley face with a plus. This allows you the ability to clap for somebody or give a thumbs up just by clicking the reactions. When you do that, the reaction comes up in the upper left, and it stays up there from somewhere from 10 to 15 seconds. In the more section, it's really about sharing your presentation live, and we won't be doing any live sharing, but I knew people were going to ask me what that was for, so I wanted to point out the live sharing section is available there when you click on the more. So now let's talk about breakout rooms. The breakout rooms tab, when you click on that, brings up the ability to create breakout rooms. So when you create a breakout room, you have the ability to create from 1 to as many rooms really as you want. My suggestion is that you try not to break out into groups smaller than 4 people, but also no more than probably about 8. You can assign the breakout rooms when you're doing that either automatically or manually, whether you want to put people in rooms yourself, or if you want to let Zoom do that for you. And when you click on the blue Create Breakout Rooms, it gives you a whole bunch of rooms to choose from. You can have the ability to rename the rooms, delete the rooms, and you can also assign from this menu. There are also options there with the little up arrow, and when you click on that, It allows you a number of settings like moving all participants into breakout rooms automatically. You can turn on or off whether you allow your participants to leave their breakout rooms and come back to the main section. I suggest that you click on the breakout rooms close automatically after, and you choose however long you think you want the session to be, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. This makes sure that you don't have to monitor the time and to let people and to remind people that their rooms are going to be shutting down. There's actually a timer that comes up and lets people know how long they have left when you set the breakout rooms close automatically. The other thing to adjust is the countdown after closing breakout room. I would say set the countdown timer less than the default 60 seconds because that 60 seconds seems like a long time when you're waiting for people to come back to your presentation. So somewhere in the 10 to 15 second range is probably the best setting. You can also recreate all your rooms. You would use this setting if you were going to have multiple breakouts within your session and you wanted people to get mixed up and not always be in the same group. You just recreate the rooms and then it would automatically reassign people to different rooms than they were in before. And all of your existing rooms will be replaced when you do that. Now, if you wanted to add a room, let's say you set it up for 1 or 2 rooms and then you realized you wanted to add a couple more, you would just click add room and it'll just add another room. And you can move people around in rooms if you need to, as well as you have the ability to visit rooms once they're assigned. So once you assign somebody to a room, or you attempt to, if you click on the assign there, a list of potential names will show up, and when you click on the little box, that person is then assigned to that room. And when you're ready, you would just click open all rooms, and you'll see a list of the breakout rooms and who has or has not joined. Everybody gets an invitation to join the rooms they've been assigned to, and if they don't join, you as the presenter or as the co-host can see who isn't partaking, who isn't joined in. You can see whether or not somebody's joined by the indication next to their name. And if you want to join that breakout room as the presenter or co-host, you just click on the join and then you'll be taken into that room. You can also broadcast a message to everyone in the room by clicking the broadcast message to all. This is a good thing to do to remind people that maybe there's only a minute or 2 left, or if you want to remind them of what the topic is that you want them to focus on when they're in the breakout rooms. So the next thing we're going to be going over is polling. You will have the ability to run polls within your session, and you click the polling tab, which will be wherever your menu bar is, right towards the middle next to the share screen. When you click on that, you have the ability to launch a poll if you have your polls preset, or you'll be able to create a poll, add a question right there. When you do that, you enter a title, and then you type in your poll and your questions or possible answers. And when you click save, well, when you click save, you should have the ability to launch your poll. Those can be preset when you're setting up your presentation, or you can preset them in your prep time before you open the session. One thing to note is that the polling information is not recorded in any way. So this is not information that you'll be able to use later if we record the session and decide we want to use it as training. These are only for the purposes of the session you're giving. The polls do not carry over, and the data does not carry over as well. When you're done, you can end your poll and you can share the results. You also have the opportunity to relaunch your poll. When you relaunch your poll, it'll send the poll back out and people have the opportunity to vote again. Now, if you don't get enough participants joining in to your poll, when you relaunch, it wipes all the answers clean. So they do have to revote. It doesn't save their original vote. So step 11, the end. This is where you would end your meeting. For all, we do ask that you end your meetings and that you end them in a timely fashion. There's only about 15 minutes in between sessions, and so we ask that you get set up 5 minutes early and open the sessions 5 minutes early, and that you end on time. If you go more than 5 minutes over, Caleb or Marnie will be coming into your session and turning it off for you. So when you click on the end meeting, you can leave the meeting or you can end the meeting for all. So what you'll want to do is end the meeting for all, and then the next presenter can come in and get set up for their session. So that is the end of the regular training.